In the dead of night, how soon we forget that this is a season for family. The meals, the days, and the gift of the harvest envelop us in their warm comfort. The coldest hours of the winter are a time when we are reminded to hold our loved ones close and to share the warmth in words that have served as our hearthstones. As the days grow shorter, cherish those kind talks and wonderful words that flow so easily from family. Welcome to episode 4 of Not Now, Not Here. This week's episode is about a special relationship between old and young, when a boy, not more than a toddler, makes an astounding discovery that changes everything in his tiny world. It's a discovery we've all made, though one that we have, perhaps, chosen to forget. The discovery of words. So turn down the lights, close your windows and doors, and sit back. Prepare to enter a world that is not now, not here. Wonderful words. Neil was home alone with his grandpa while his parents were out shopping at the grocery store. He was sitting on the living room carpet, wearing nothing but a diaper and a stained blue shirt, playing with one of his trucks. He stopped when Grandpa said, "You're such a good boy, Neil." Neil turned his head toward the sound. Something clicked in his brain. For the first time, he understood what his grandpa said. He recognized and understood words. Before, he'd known his parents loved him by the way they spoke, and he'd known the cat was angry by the way it yowled when he pulled its tail. But prior to this moment, he'd never known that there were things called words, and that people could create them. It made sense when he thought about it. Words were much better than the babble his parents and the cat usually spit out. Grandpa sat in his recliner nearby, peacefully looking down at Neil. "Such a handsome and good boy," Grandpa said. "I love you very much." How strange that he'd never noticed. Of course there were words. Neil wrinkled up his face and tried to make some words of his own. But, just like his stubborn legs and his stubby fingers, he couldn't make his tongue do what he wanted it to. He gave an exasperated look to his grandfather. His grandfather made a surprised sound in response. "Do you see that little black thing there, Neil?" Grandpa said. "It's on the table, next to the book. Can you get that for me?" Neil flopped on his side and crawled his way over to the table beside Grandpa's recliner. He knew the thing Grandpa was talking about. His parents seemed to love it and hold it to their ears all the time. It was little and black and had lots of buttons on the front to press. Holding on to the edge of the table, Neil pulled himself up into a standing position and grabbed the little black thing. "Good. You're such a good boy. Now, press the green button. Good, good. Now, the 9. No, the number 9. His grandfather sighed. Neil scowled at the little buttons. He supposed the marks he saw meant something, but he didn't understand what. He put the black box on Grandpa's knee and smiled. Grandpa didn't touch it. No, Grandpa said, his face still peaceful. "This isn't working. Let's see. Do you know the fun toys that stick to the front of the refrigerator? Yes? Bring me those, Neil." Again, Neil knew just what Grandpa meant. He crawled across the living room carpet and into the kitchen. On the front of the fridge were dozens of little plastic squiggles in many shapes and colors. Neil started plucking them off. He knew, though, that Daddy didn't like it when he pulled too many off. That was why Daddy had moved them up so high, and Neil could only reach 3 of them. He brought them back to Grandpa and put them on the floor. Neil smiled. B, R, and X, Grandpa said. Is that all you could get? Well, that's okay, Neil. You did very well. You're a good boy, and I love you very much. Grandpa was silent for a moment, his hands on his lap, that same peaceful look on his face. Neil, I need you to get 2 things for me now. First, one of your crayons, okay? And a piece of paper. Can you do that for Grandpa? He could. He knew where Mommy kept the colors, in a box on the second shelf in his room, and there was paper everywhere. Books were full of the stuff, although Daddy wasn't happy if he colored on that paper. Instead, he took a yellow pad of paper off the same shelf as the colors. Neil sat down in front of Grandpa with his box of crayons and paper. This will be very difficult, Neil, Grandpa said, but I need you to write something. I need you to draw a special picture, a picture with words, Neil. Can you do that? Words, those wonderful little things. Neil would love to make a picture with those. But how? He selected his favorite green crayon and held it tightly in his fist, ready to try. I'll tell you what to draw, okay? First, make a D. It's an up and down line and then a curvy one. Good, that's excellent. Now, next to the D, write an O. It's just a circle, Neil. Good, that's wonderful. Now, a tricky one, an N. Make 2 up and down lines. Good. Then 1 crooked line that connects them from the top to the bottom. Almost. Yeah, that'll do. You're doing so well, Neil. You're such a good boy. Neil heard the back door open. His parents were home. He smiled at his grandpa. If Grandpa could use words, maybe his parents could use words too. Neil, don't stop writing, Neil. Grandpa sounded excited. But it was odd, Neil thought, that Grandpa's mouth didn't move when he spoke his words. In fact, Grandpa didn't move at all. When Mommy came into the living room with a grocery bag in her arms, Neil looked up at her. He was so happy that he could hear words now, and he wanted to hear what wonderful words Mommy would use. We're home, Mommy said. But her words weren't the same as Grandpa's. Neil couldn't understand Mommy's words. Neil, Grandpa said. They can't hear me, Neil. They can't hear me. They're too old. You've got to write, Neil. You've got to write something down. Don't bury me. You've got to write that, Neil. You've got to write those 3 words. Daddy came into the room. How was he, Pop? Daddy paused. Pop? He went to Grandpa and grabbed his arm. Oh my God, Pop! Honey, call an ambulance! Pop isn't breathing! After that, there was a lot of moving and running. Neil couldn't follow it. Why didn't everybody just sit down and use more of these amazing little words like Grandpa did? Surely that would be easier. Neil, you've got to write it down. Please, Neil, remember. Write, don't bury me. Write, I'm still in here. Please, Neil, you've got to write it down. Neil wanted to do as his grandpa said, but his mother picked him up before he could try again. Soon, men in white shirts came and stood over Grandpa. Heart attack, they said. He's been dead for hours. But Neil didn't understand those words. The only words he understood were Grandpa's, and he wanted to hear more of them. But the men in white shirts took Grandpa away. That brings us to the end of this week's episode. We hope you found it as thrilling to hear as we found it to make. Be sure to tune in next week for another puzzling installment. This week's episode features music by Kevin MacLeod. The songs Ghost Story and On the Shore are used under the Creative Commons license and can be found at incompetech.com. If you have a project and you need scoring, or if you just want to hear some cool music, I strongly recommend that you check out Kevin's site. You can also visit notnownothere.com for more information about the music, including legal information and links to all the songs you just heard. Other music was provided by jewelbeat.com, another great source for background music and scores. They've got a huge selection and are wonderful if you need music for any projects you are working on. This podcast is written and performed by Phillip Kohtz. If you like any of the stories you hear on the show, you can read them or download them for free online. You can find all of the stories published in a variety of digital formats, corresponding artwork, poetry, our blog, and also news about future releases at notnownothere.com. You can also find us on Twitter and probably other places. We don't know, we're new at this. If you like what we're doing, please spread the word and be sure to stop by our site and give us your feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts, opinions, criticisms, and ideas. Until next week, kind listeners, it's time to return to the now and the here. May the winds be ever at your back.